We're going to start this meeting in about 1 minute. Just waiting for everybody to come in. The important things I'm going to ask of you, please. Should be civil, have some decorum. If you have cell phone, any other electronic gizmo, that's going to wake everybody up. Please be so kind as to put it into the buzz or the silent mode. With that, I've already turned mine off. I'll introduce myself. I'm Brian Ralph. I'm going to be the facilitator and moderator tonight. I'll be the person running the meeting. This is Jay Handal, who's our featured speaker tonight.
You clap now. Now you clap.
This is Diane. Are you a board member or a stakeholder?
Stakeholder.
Stakeholder from Arleta. This is Mary, who's kind of the driving force behind us. Who does our paperwork and says, hey guys, wake up. This is Anita, who's from here in North Hills West, and who got us this room because she's one of the good volunteers here at the Mid-Valley Library. And this is William Kuzman, who's our fearless inspiration. So with that, I'm going to let Mary do the mission, Anita do the mission and the vision statement.
First, good evening, everyone, and thank you for coming. We appreciate it. We hope that all of us together can make neighborhood councils work better. We're not opposed to them. We think they're wonderful. They just need to be, they need to hear our voice. I guess that's basically what it is. So this is our mission, to empower stakeholders with the tools to enlighten and effect positive reform of the neighborhood council system, which was created by the Charter Amendment of the City of Los Angeles, to enlighten City Council as to the Department of Neighborhood Empowerment's failure to provide sufficient support, assistance, and oversight to the individual neighborhood councils in compliance with the goals and purposes as stated in the Neighborhood Council Plan Ordinance. And our vision is a City of Los Angeles neighborhood council system in which every stakeholder is encouraged and empowered to participate in the conduct of business of their neighborhood council and to demand that their respective board of directors represent the stakeholders in all related community matters. In addition, we envision that all neighborhood council boards operate in full compliance with all applicable laws. The Brown Act, the California Public Records Act, the Neighborhood Council bylaws, codes of civility, and the Department of Neighborhood Empowerment resolutions, rules, regulations, and quote-unquote best practices guidelines with honesty, openness, and transparency. That's what we would like, and I'm sure that you all would like that.
Okay. We have speaker cards in the back. If you'd like to say something, just fill it out. If you want to put your email on there, that way if you have questions, we can answer. We can email you back if you want to. We'll try and find it for you. We also have suggestion cards. This is something new somebody brought up, or William brought up. There is no suggestion box, but you can just leave it on the back table there. And there's copies of the program for tonight.
Just to add on to what Mary just shared, speaker cards are, and we'll announce this again later, for this meeting they have a specific purpose. We want to hear about your success stories, or we want to hear about how you need help primarily. It's not for just, complaining about something that's going on. We want it to be a proactive thing, a success story, or an area where you need help. And as far as the suggestions, we're a brand new group. We want to be open to any suggestions as to how we can run our meetings better, what you might like to see us put up on our website that would be helpful to you all, these types of things. So we are open to that.
And one last thing before I let Jay do his own talk, tell us about himself and talk about what he's going to do here. When you come up to speak, when you fill it out, I'm going to ask you to give specific details regarding your problem or your issue, and give us a time frame with it, and when you elected to fix it. If you need help in filing the complaint, talk to us. That's what we're here for. We can guide you. And just remember, just because something's wrong doesn't mean it's illegal. And remember, not all grievances are solvable. That's what we have to remind ourselves about. And that sometimes you can only grieve something if they're willing to. But hey, it's always worth the try. So with that, I thank you again. I turn this over to Mr. Jay Handal. Thank you, sir.
So good evening. My name is Jay Handal. I am the chair of the West LA Neighborhood Council. I'm the vice chair of the Western Alliance of Neighborhood Councils in my district. That's 13 neighborhood and community councils. I chair the SEEC program, which is a mentoring program, which is a program that was put together 4 years ago when it became very evident that a lot of neighborhood councils had issues they couldn't deal with, and the department didn't have staff to deal with it. So, and there was a little bit of a mistrust between neighborhood councils and certain staff members. So maybe having a mentor, someone who is, as I say when I go into a council, I am you. Maybe they listen better coming from someone that can be more objective. I also am the co-chair of the Citywide Budget Advocates, which is in the charter, which gives us the ability to weigh in on budget issues in the city. So I wear a lot of hats on a very small thing. But I've learned how to fend off tomatoes and things much faster than most because of all my hats. So tonight I'm here because I popped in at the last meeting you guys had. I've been out to North Hills, and as North Hills knows, I've been to the neighborhood council, sent out by the department to see some of the issues that were going on there. And I want to talk more about the mentoring itself, how we help, the issues that you guys are having, and a broader picture of the rights, the wrongs. I'm not going to sit here and defend stakeholders. I'm not going to sit here and defend the Department of Neighborhood Empowerment. There's a little bit of everything going on out there, and I think I want to bring that to light, having been the embedded stakeholder, quote, mentor in Echo Park, in Arroyo Seco, in downtown Los Angeles. I've been placed by the department in a number of neighborhood councils that were what we call pre-exhaustive efforts. We're not quite going into exhaustive efforts, but we don't want them to go into exhaustive efforts. Can they be helped? Can someone go in and help them, help the stakeholders who are saying they do that wrong, they do that wrong, they don't follow that rule, they don't post on time, they throw in extra things, and help neighborhood councils who, quite frankly, in a lot of cases have factions, and all they do is fight each other, and your business never gets done. The true business of the elected is to take care of the stakeholders' business. And unfortunately, sometimes they're so busy fighting over their own parochial issues on the board that by the time they get to you, there's someone in the back flicking the lights going, 9 o'clock, everybody get out! You gotta go! And then you go, God, we got like 4 developments and 5 spending items and blah, 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 and nothing's getting done. So we come in and we teach a better way to run a meeting, a more organized way to run a meeting. A meeting where the stakeholders can truly be heard, their business get done, okay, and try to mediate and keep the board from fighting each other. And in some cases, I have to make recommendations to the department, and the recommendations have been, we really need to freeze their funds and give them massive trainings, because without that, they're going to continue to just swallow what they're doing and fight all day. And no stakeholder is going to continue to come to a meeting where there's fighting among the board and the business isn't being done. You come for an item, that item isn't being heard, you get angry, you don't come back, you tell all your friends, don't go there, they're ridiculous, they're stupid, they don't do anything, and it really marginalizes the neighborhood council, which in turn takes away your voice. Because that's what neighborhood councils are. Neighborhood councils are your voice to the electors. If you read Charter Section 900, through 14, it states the main goal of neighborhood councils is to bridge the gap between the stakeholders and the electors, and to report on what's happening and deliverables, and be able to get those deliverables into your community. Potholes aren't being filled, trees aren't being trimmed, ambulances aren't showing up on time, lights are out and not being fixed in a timely manner, whatever those things happen to be. So you don't get the opportunity to have that voice if the neighborhood council isn't doing their job. Because you know as well as I do, you know, city council has 250,000 people and a bunch of deputies that run around, make notes, and send stuff in. Neighborhood councils, while we don't have any legal authority, it's all about the authority you take and the power you take. And the strong neighborhood councils are strong with their city council members and actually have a lot of power. So, again, for instance, I use my neighborhood council where we had a development in our area and my neighborhood council took a position different than our city council member. And the city council member called the club chair and myself into a meeting and he said, I'm going to go against what you guys decided and I'm going to tell you what. And our answer was, that's a really big mistake and you're going to lose. And he lost. He lost at the city planning commission because what we wanted was right. And the planning commission understood it was right. So you do have power. You can bring things forward, but you can't when you have a dysfunctional neighborhood council. Now, I've been to North Hills. I've been to a lot of, I'm not picking on North Hills, but you know, for your region, it's one that I've been to a number of times. And I think the people who are sitting at the table here some of them can attest, you know, that when I went out there, by the department, sent by the department, I was able to stop issues that should never have happened. I identified an illegal agenda that was put out the night of that had an additional item on it, okay, and I had that agenda item stopped, and I had the original agenda put back into place. I had items that were being voted on stopped because there was no paperwork to view those items, because the public and every board member has a right and has to have a copy of the documents they're voting on. You vote on something you can't read. It makes no sense. So, you know, in one night, I think we stopped one agenda completely and stopped 3 items in particular, and then that's in dialogue with the department somewhere thereafter. So, that's a tip of what we do when we go out and mentor. Well, let's talk about neighborhood councils in general and what people expect of neighborhood councils. You know, a lot of stakeholders expect neighborhood councils. If I bring 20 people to a neighborhood council on an item, and those 20 people yell and scream, no, vote no, vote no, vote no, and the neighborhood council vote yes. You know, neighborhood council people hear the same thing elected officials hear every day. You vote the way I tell you to vote. You represent me. Well, the good neighborhood council represents the entire district that they work with, not just the 10 or 20 people who show up to maybe have it right in their backyard. That's the issue. You have to look at the bigger, broader scope. So we take a lot of heat in our neighborhood council because there are issues that come up. In my neighborhood council area, West LA has the highest concentration of planning permits pulled in the city. We have more development going on there than anywhere in the city. And I will tell you, we catch some heat from certain stakeholders because A, we don't say no, because we know the law, we know the rules, and we know what they're entitled to. So the question is, can I get a better deal than what they're entitled to? Because if I just say no, I've lost my voice downtown, and they're going to go get everything they want. So what we do is we negotiate a better deal than what they could get downtown. I happen to be very fortunate. My vice chair on my council is the president of the West Area Planning Commission. So he's very knowledgeable about what goes on and what the rules are and what can be done and what can't be done, what we can stop and what we can't stop. So when we identify something that we can't stop because it's a quote-unquote by right, then what we attempt to do is negotiate a better looking project, a less dense project, something that will affect us, you know, in less of a way than the original project was. So, an example, Sawtell Boulevard, 1900 Sawtell. Okay, one come in on an 1818 by right project. Okay, 5 stories high, workspace on the first floor. Well, we wanted commercial on the first floor. And we met with them and we said, okay, what we'd really like you to do is articulate the building because it's towards the corner, so at least it doesn't look like a box when you come into it. Okay. We'd like you to get rid of the retail, the restaurant on the first floor, and put in work, not restaurant. And the reason was public safety, because Sawtell now has so many restaurants on it that it's just so totally unsafe. We actually just got a traffic light designated to the corner. It tells you how much traffic we have. The developer did. He did everything we asked him to do. Every single thing we asked him to do, he did. Why? He wanted the community support. He wanted to be able to go into the city council office, to the CPC, and say, we work with the community, and this is what they wanted. We were happy to give it to them. So, the 20 people who came in screaming, absolutely not, were very unhappy. Because they didn't get a no vote from us. We knew what they were entitled to. So why would we vote no when they're going to get everything they want? Let's make it a better project for our community. So when I say that not everyone goes home happy when they're in the crowd, they don't go home happy sometimes. But neighborhood councils, if they're knowledgeable enough, their job is to protect the entire community and do the best possible job they can for the community. So let's talk about transparency, because I know a lot of you guys have issues of transparency. And I know that this organization, promotes file grievances, file complaints. And I will tell you, as someone who volunteers in the city for this department, okay, that inundating them with complaints and grievances on a formal basis is crazy. Because we don't have staff to handle anything now. So there's basically 5 NEAs, Neighborhood Empowerment Analysts, is that right? Advocates? I think they're analysts, yeah. Yes. But in any case, there's only 5 to cover 95 neighborhood councils. Now I can tell you, when I was the IDA for elections and I had 2 districts, I had 18 neighborhood councils to deal with. That was one hell of a job. I was out 7 nights a week working on neighborhood council. And still couldn't get to everyone at every meeting they needed to. Councils that are having problems, councils that are in trouble, councils that are dysfunctional, councils that aren't obeying the rules need a babysitter. That's the bottom line. They need someone from Dunn or a peer group or somebody to be able to sit in the crowd and go, excuse me, you can't do that. Excuse me, that wasn't on the agenda. Excuse me, where are the papers? We can't see the papers, you can't vote on. And I will tell you, when you're there and you do that, it's a much calmer, quieter, more respectful meeting. Am I right? And it works out. Now, I will tell you, we have tools to work with. And in some neighborhood councils, and I saw you on the sign on the door out there where it said, if you disrupt the meeting, we'll ask you. Well, when I go as a member of the neighborhood council, I hang the city seal with the sign that tells them, if you disrupt the meeting, you will be either taken out or arrested under the penal code. And in some neighborhood councils, and many in the department, many know that I am the king of calling LAPD. I have no problem removing people, whether they're board members or stakeholders who are out of control. Because nobody will disrespect each other in a meeting that I work with, because then the business of the people doesn't get done. And you only have to do it once. Because when you do it once, people realize you're not playing. And then it becomes a civil meeting again. So, there's lots of tricks to helping people become more transparent. But I have to say that I think I can teach you a better way than just filing formal grievances to inundate everybody with paperwork and get nothing done. Now, that coupled with the fact that we have a grievance policy that was passed, that the city attorney is still sitting on the ordinance to get it through, and unfortunately, as I found out the other day, it is not a bylaws overlay policy. It is a policy that every neighborhood council will have to adopt. Okay? Which is a problem for me, because those neighborhood councils that are not doing the things they should be doing won't adopt this policy. And they'll do their own little grievance policy that will take damn near forever to get any grievance heard. So, for instance, downtown Los Angeles, mentoring in there, they had 57 grievances. Finally, we got a grievance panel put together, And in 2 hours and 5 minutes, all 57 grievances were heard and disposed of one way or the other. And in fact, 30 were upheld, 20 were denied, and 7 were sent to the city attorney because there were city attorney issues that needed to be dealt with. So, in a perfect world, a good grievance policy would fit exactly what you guys are trying to do, which is get all your grievances together and make them come to a panel. And again, the panel is envisioned as a regional panel of neighborhood council members, okay, who are appointed to it like a 12-member panel, for instance. Okay, and every time a grievance comes in the council, 3 people out of that 12 would be picked to hear the grievances, and they wouldn't be from the council that the grievances were coming from. So it would be a fair and open, transparent hearing of grievances. And again, if this policy ever gets through, it'll be a great policy for the system. It'll help you guys, and quite frankly, it'll help the neighborhood councils that are having so many issues they have. In the meantime, I would totally tell you that inundating, the city, and really not inundating the city, you're hitting the neighborhood councils with all these grievances. Okay, and my suggestion has been, and I still suggest this to the city, is that we have an ombudsman program where stakeholders can actually go to somebody who's independent and say, you know what, I have a problem with blah, blah, blah president. He won't put anything I want on the agenda. I have a problem with blah, blah, blah president because she won't bring any paperwork and she tells us, she fabricates why we don't have to have paperwork and she plays the rules. Whatever the problem is, I have a problem with my NEA. My NEA gave us really bad information. NEA, the neighborhood empowerment, the Dunn representative. I have a problem with the Dunn representative. They gave us really bad information. Okay, and now it's caused this and this and this. And it happens. You have a funding division, you have an NEA division, you have an outreach division, and they're all acting almost independently at this point. And my suggestion to the general manager was, you got to pull it in and bring the team back together again. Because it's not helping the stakeholders, and it's not helping the board members when funding tells you, this is what I need, and then the NEA goes, well, this is what you need, and these two ain't even close. So that's an issue, because then we operate wrong no matter what we do, because we're being given information that's just not good. So that's a suggestion that's being bantered around right now. Quite frankly, my conversation with Gracie was, you got to pull it together, take the 3 balloons and make it a bouquet. Because right now what you got is a bunch of balloons hanging out in the air, they're all doing their own thing. So, let's talk about all the new rules that we hear and that they're not obeying all the new rules. We heard about the health department issue. You have to have a health permit for events. You have to have this, you have to have that. Everyone goes, the department didn't tell us, the department this, the department that. Not sticking up for the department? I got to tell you, when risk management sends something down and it's a whole new set of rules, the first question is why? Now, the health issue was a very interesting issue, the health permit issue. You all know about the health permit issue? No. We weren't okay. So, it came back to neighborhood council. We get this all the time as neighborhood council. New rules. I feel like Bill Maher every week. New rules, new rules, new rules. And you sit there and you look at these new rules. Well, the health department issue was a perfect example. People came out and said, well, now you have to have a health permit if you serve food at an event. And Arroyo Seco had a paleta day. They were giving away ice cream bars, paleta bars. And they actually ended up canceling their event because the department wouldn't fund the event because they needed to have a health permit. So I went to a bond meeting, and I actually offered at the bond meeting, I have the guy in the health department, if you need me to find out rules, I'll get you rules. I went a couple of weeks, nothing happened. I finally called the guy, and he gave me his liaison person. He's the number 2 guy in the health department. He gave me a whole fact sheet. We sent it to the department. You don't have to have a health department permit for collective bars. You don't have to have a health department permit. You bring food in from a restaurant and give it out to stakeholders. If there's no cash changing hands, if it's just a no cash event that the neighborhood council is doing, you don't need to have a health permit. So risk management's like, well, prove it. Dude, the health department says they're not going to take an application for a health permit. Okay? So here's the new rules. But again, it took weeks and weeks and weeks when it could have been solved with a phone call, an email, and something coming back. Now, why doesn't that happen? Because they're inundated with stuff to do downtown. Public Records Act requests, grievances, new rules from risk management, new rules from the CAO, new rules from here and from there. And everybody just acts, it's slow. Turnaround is really slow. So the other issue, we talk about the NEAs not coming out to the meeting. When was the last time you saw an NEA at your meeting?
Last month.
Wait until she's back.
She's not an NEA. She's not an NEA. I'm talking about one of the 5 neighborhood empowerment. Who came to your meeting?
Melvin Condas.
Excellent. Has anyone else seen their NEA lately?
Mr. Conley.
Lately?
Yeah, has not been to
What do you
one
call
of
lately?
us meeting for.
So, and what I call lately, like in the last few months?
No.
Okay, so let's talk, I don't want to pinpoint anybody, but let's talk about North Hills West for a minute. Because we know that North Hills West has issues. I don't think anyone in this room is going to deny there's issues at North Hills West. Okay? And having said that, that's a neighborhood council that should have somebody there at every single meeting. Not just their board meeting, their planning meeting, their outreach meeting. Someone should be there guiding them through the process of transparency, openness, and fairness so that they run good meetings and represent their stakeholders. So currently, again, this is again me talking. Currently, as I said, there's 5 NEAs, and there's 95 neighborhood councils all over the city, and each NEA has a region or a region and a half since one of them has been divided up. I have been an advocate, and I have asked the department manager in the last couple of weeks to look at comp-statting the staff. We know how the police comp-stat their staff, right?
That's comp-stat.
So computer statistics, what they do is they look and see where are the needs, and the cops then take from here and put them over here because, well, I know you want 300 in your division, you really need 200, but that division's got a murder every night, they need 400. It's the same issue with neighborhood councils. We've got a lot of neighborhood councils who are fully functional. And then we have about 15 to 21 that are semi to not really functional. So if the NEAs are running out to do a report, because they have 5 neighborhood councils they have to go to in one night, and they spend 15 minutes running in, giving a done report, and running out the door, that's not effective. They could do that by email. They could send that email to the president and say, here's my done report, please print it and read it for me. You don't need anyone to do that. Not in a functional neighborhood council. But in the dysfunctional neighborhood councils, in the semi-functional neighborhood councils, you need that person to be there to stop the bad behavior, to stop the bickering, to keep control of the meeting, and ensure the stakeholders' business is done. So, again, from my side, I, as a chair of a mentoring program, my request to the department is reevaluate how you do this. And let's use the mentors to go out to the tough councils and let the NEAs go to the other councils, because the tough councils need you there all night. They need you there for the entire meeting. They need to know everything that's going on in that council. So that, again, is a current request into the department to reconfigure how the NEAs do their job. Now, that goes to why can't we get certain NEAs to do things? Why can't we get Gracie to do this? Why can't we get Gracie to do that? Have you ever said that to yourself? How come they can't get this done, this can't get done? So let's look at my program, the C4C program. 4 years ago we started. A little over a year ago, the employees filed a labor dispute against the Department of Neighborhood Empowerment with us. And they said, you're letting these guys take our job, and that's a violation of our MOU. And we had been on hold for almost a year. So the few times people have seen, it was because the councils had so many issues that the NEA actually said, I don't want to go there, I can't go there, let's send somebody else. And let the mentors go. Now that dispute after a year has finally been handled. And my meeting is coming this Monday to try and do a bigger, broader mentoring program to be able to put people in local councils that are having issues. And that's a big step. That will be a big step towards some of the issues that I'm sure I'm going to hear in the next 10 or 15 minutes. Okay, you guys are going through. So in the end, you know, I really want to open it up to questions, or I want to hear what you guys are going through. But in the end, I will say this. Is the department always right? No. Are the stakeholders always right? No. You know, do the stakeholders know all the rules? No. Do the board members know all the rules? No. Do the board members know the rules and disobey them? Sometimes. And those are the issues. So what I say is, you know, a grievance is never based on, I don't like the decision they made, you know, because that's not a grievance. A grievance can't be made against an individual. It has to be made against the board as a whole. Okay, so if a grievance goes in and you say, I grieve against so-and-so, the chair, because he did this, grievance has to be against the whole board. It can't be against an individual. You can then write out what the grievance is and who you think did what they did. But the grievance is, it's a board grievance, because the board acted wrong, whether it's under the direction of somebody or the committee, you know, the planning, whatever. So remember, it's not about it's not about, oh, I voted for Home Depot. No. It doesn't matter whether you voted for or against it, that's not the issue. Now, if it wasn't on the agenda when you voted for it, that's an issue. Okay, or if you had a little side deal going on that you didn't disclose, that's an ethics issue. That's an issue. Okay, so from a grievance standpoint, you know, you just have to understand how the grievance policy works. Okay, and then have all of you read the bylaws of your local neighborhood council? If you haven't, read them. Read the bylaws. Because the other insanity that we have as a neighborhood council system, in my personal opinion, is we have 95 neighborhood councils with 95 different rules. And that's the dumbest thing I've ever seen in my life. Okay, so there's a lot of people out there in the system, you know, stakeholders and old neighborhood council people who will beat the drum and say, you know, no, grassroots, leave us alone, we don't need any rules, don't tell us what to do. Well, look at how they act when they have rules. So the point is, yes, they need rules. You know, I always tell people very simply, we're part of a system and we're spending taxpayer dollars. If you don't like the system, don't take the money, decertify, and go become a community council. Then you can be a giant homeowners association and you can do whatever in God's name you want to do. Okay? But if you want to take the money and you want to be part of the system, you got to obey the rules. And you really got to get the department and bond and the city attorney on the same page to make sure the rules are obeyed. Okay? That's part of our mission. Part of our mission has to not only get the 3 balloons I told you about, outreach, funding, and NEAs, it's also bond the department and the city attorney. We've got to pull them all together so everyone's playing by the same rules and everyone's enforcing the rules. If you don't have your paperwork in 30 days, we're going to freeze your fund. Well, how come this neighborhood council went 120 days, they still don't have their paperwork in, and they're still spending money? Oh, well, we really don't want to do it. Last time we froze their funds was an uproar. No! Freeze the funds! It's the rules! So, it's on both sides. That's what I'm saying. It's on both sides. So, your responsibility as stakeholders, in my mind, is you're our police. You know? You're the ones who watch what happens and doesn't happen, and watch what happens wrong, whether it's from a department point of view or the board point of view. And what I would say to you is, you know, rather than filing grievances with the board, when sometimes they take it never sees the light of day, then you have to file a grievance on the grievance that was never heard as a grievance. Okay? I call that a compound grievance, by the way. You know, I would suggest that you have a department downtown, and the most effective way is if there is a legitimate complaint that you guys have, okay, write it to the general manager and copy your NEA. Because the more the general manager sees the problems, and don't whine about stupid little stuff that's not right. You know, we gotta go after the meat and potatoes. You know, you gotta hit them where they're really violating and causing a problem. You know, but you gotta get that stuff downtown. Because you've seen with a lot of neighborhood councils, you send them agreements, and it could take months and months and months, even though the bylaws say, you know, at the next board meeting, you have to put a grievance panel. 2 weeks later, they have to have a meeting. The next board meeting, it has to be brought back with a report. Yeah, I challenge you guys to show me where that's worked in 99% of the cases. Because it doesn't work that way. You know, if it goes to the chair, and the chair is the one who commits all the bad stuff, the chair just never shows a grievance to anybody. You know, and that's just kind of how it works. So, you know, I fully believe that you gotta get stuff out there. Because the more downtown sees what's happening from a group of neighborhood councils, it's easy to calm down. Well, I got 15 complaints on this neighborhood council. I got 10 complaints on this neighborhood council. This neighborhood council is working really well. This neighborhood council is working really well. We need to concentrate right here on these two. We need to put staff in there. We need to put members in there. We need to put someone to find out what's going on and report back. And if you do that, it will be a lot more effective than inundating people, you know, with just grievances. Public Records Act requests. How many people love to file PRAs? Have you filed them? Anybody file PRAs? Good. So PRAs, you know, just in case you don't know, if you've never been charged before for the documents you want, you will be. You will be. Because under the government code, 12.40, I believe it is, you know, you will be charged. And you should be charged. Because Public Records Act, you can go down and inspect them, but the amount of work it takes for people to pull documents on a regular basis is just staggering. So there is a provision in the code, and actually, you know, we're advocating that that provision be upheld, that you be charged. Because maybe not in your case, but in a lot of cases, there are so many frivolous PRAs that come out, okay? Or maybe not so frivolous, but just so broad it's done to annoy you and make it so that you can't operate. So there are charges. And those charges will start to be hammered on people who do this because it's just not fair to the volunteers, who you're angry at because they're not doing their job, which goes back to get it to the department. You know, penalizing all the other board members who are actually trying to do something good, or maybe 5 out of 15 who are trying to do something good, you know, okay, 3 out of 15. But the point is they should all be trying to do something good. And the best way to get them to do something good is good. How many people here go and ask a question from someone and the answer you want is yes, but you go to the lowest level person on the totem pole and the only answer they can give you is no, or I'll find out? I don't. I go to whoever can say yes. I don't want to talk to anyone who can't tell me yes. You know what? And there's nobody in this system that can tell you yes as high up as your general manager. So I would tell you that making rash and broad-based and cumbersome Public Records Act requests, they don't help anybody. What really helps is having to sit down with the general manager and talking about the issues. If it means bringing the city attorney in at the same time, okay, have the city attorney come in at the same time, you know, because just inundating people with paperwork, and certainly downtown it doesn't help, because they don't have the staff to do what they're doing now, you know. So I would just caution, I guess is what I would say, you know, inundating people with PRAs is not a good thing, no more than inundating people with grievances. You know, that sit on the shelf and get adjudicated right now by the same people you're grieving against. Think about it. If you read the bylaws, you file a grievance, you're the president, you appoint 3 people, the 3 people go hear it, they bring it back to the whole board, and you say, I vote no. And everyone goes, okay, I vote no. What the hell is the point of that? Okay, all it did was frustrate you all more. So, we got some fixes being worked on in the grievance area. In the PRA area, I think it's more a case, I honestly believe it's more a case you guys need to go right to the GM with your complaints, you know, and have them adjudicated through the GM. Let them look at it and let them come back and give you a report of what the issues are. Because it's a much better, more effective way to get it done. That's my opinion. I'd like to open it up.
Before I open it up here, we're gonna open it up, don't worry. There's one other item that I know we look for in transparency, and I'm gonna ask Jay here to talk a little bit about the posting requirements, because that always seems to be an issue. These are things.
So we all know, and you know, I'll just make it quick. The posting requirements are simple. You know, Vermont passed a new policy, and if every neighborhood council has identified their 24-hour location, okay, and then you have to have it on your website, assuming you have a website. Okay, you have to have it to neighborhood support to go out on the ENS system, and you have to have 24-hour public posting place. That's all you're required to if the board goes ahead and says that that's what it is, and they identify the one place. If you don't have a website that works, okay, then you're still subject to the old requirements, you know, with your 5 posting places and ENS and everything else. That's basically the update where it is at this point. I will tell you that, you know, that was brought about for a number of different reasons. Some think it's a good idea. You know, I was at a neighborhood council the other night where they basically said, we'll vote for it because we just want to make sure we're compliant, but we're not going to stop posting in all our other locations. Now, if they happen to miss one, nobody can come back and say, you violated the Brown Act, you can't have your meeting. Because I did happen to be at one location, had it on the website, and had it through ENS. And I just want to state something else when I mentioned websites. We have well over a dozen neighborhood councils who have no website or websites not working well. But the other thing is, look at your neighborhood council website and tell me if you click onto agendas, are all the agendas in there in the archives? Are all the minutes in there in the archives? If they're not, you know who to write to. Write to your department and demand transparency of your neighborhood council. Okay? No grievance. Look, I'm a stakeholder. I'm a group of stakeholders, and I can't find anything here. I can't go back and look up anything. My neighborhood council, someone does a Public Records Act request, everything we do is on our website. The answer is, thank you very much. Please go to www.blah, click on this, it's all there. Thank you. And that's the end of our Public Records Act request, because it's all there and transparent. And every neighborhood council should have everything there and transparent. So check all your websites of your neighborhood councils. If you're missing the archives, the minutes aren't there, if they're not posted, the agendas aren't posted, you know who to write to. Send it down and let them know. This neighborhood council is not operating in an open, honest, and transparent manner with the stakeholders. And every committee should have their minutes posted, and every committee should have their agendas posted. We shouldn't have issues with, like we had one neighborhood council out here, where they were making up stories while I was asking, well, where are the minutes for all these things? I felt like I was watching Who's On First with Abbott and Costello. I don't know, shortstop. You know, it was insane. But I had 3 different stories in 5 minutes of where the minutes and where the meetings were. So, you know, again, you're the police. You can look that stuff up. And you can write downtown and say, where is it? So the other issue is Brown Act. I see it on your agenda. So a lot of people don't like the Brown Act. They said, we should go to a sunshine law. I don't like the Brown Act, blah, blah, blah. I got to tell you, me, I'm a firm believer in the Brown Act. And I'm a believer in the Brown Act for this reason alone. I go to community councils that are non-empowerment councils, and I see you get up and go, so-and-so has a trailer out in front of his restaurant, advertising his restaurant, and I think we should boycott his restaurant. Well, that's a good idea. What do you think about that? That's a great idea. Think that's a good idea? Make a motion. I motion we boycott that guy's restaurant. What do you think? Second. Now it comes out in the minutes, and the local newspaper picks it up. You know, community council boycotts blah blah restaurant for having parking trailers. You know, they allege there's 7 trailers. Well, it turns out the guy has 1 trailer. It's parked legally. It's completely compliant at the time. Okay. Now they've just defamed him all through without even inviting him to come and talk about what the issue is. That's why, to me, the Brown Act is absolutely important. Nobody gets ambushed. Everybody has enough time to see what's going on, assuming they do what they're supposed to do with their postings and their backup documents and everything else. Okay? But again, the Brown Act, to me, is a tool you should use to keep everybody compliant. Now, how many of you have been in neighborhood council meetings where you believe there were Brown Act violations? Okay. So, how many of you reported those violations to your NEA and to downtown? And what was the results?
Still pending.
So two things.
But there are some results
Some
outside.
pluses,
Okay.
some pluses.
So two things. Legally, the Brown Act is covered by the district attorney, not the city. Okay? So then it's a case of, are they following the rules, which is a department issue? And that's where the department should be stepping in. Oh, you alleged there's a Brown Act violation. What was the violation? Blah, blah, blah. Pull the minutes, this, and when you do something, my suggestion, if you want faster action, if you're alleging that something wasn't on the agenda or not worded the way they ended up doing, and you're filing a Brown Act violation, send it down with all the backup documentation, so that the NEAs who have no time to do anything, okay, don't have to start searching through a website that doesn't have anything posted, has to call the violator who never sends anything back, okay, and all of a sudden nothing ever happens. So, you know, I tell people all the time, you're going to file a grievance, you're going to file a Brown Act violation. It's like going to the police department and reporting the crime. If you don't give them the evidence, they're not going to investigate the police department. Well, it's the same thing. You're filing a complaint, but you're not giving them any back. It's your hearsay. It's what you say happened. Now, a lot of neighborhood councils film today. When I go to neighborhood councils as a mentor, I bring a camera and I film. Because historically, there's somebody at that neighborhood council who files a grievance against me because of what I did at that meeting in stopping people, blah, blah, blah. Well, you can't file a grievance against me, but you can talk a lot of smack about me. And I always take the disc and give it to the department manager and say, let's watch it together. Is this what you believe happened? Okay, use your evidence. And I tend to film everything I go to. It's my back to make sure people know when I stop somebody or I call the police or I did it, there was a reason for what I did. So always have your evidence is my point. Always have your evidence.
Thank you, sir. This is all the open forum, and I'd like, Mary, at this point, when I recognize the speakers, I would like you to give them 2 minutes, please.
That's all right.
Sorry. All right,
I'm used to it.
Okay. At this point, I would also ask if you guys have speaker cards, to bring me your speaker cards. So at this point, I'm going to recognize this gentleman from Arleta. I'm going to recognize Mr. Orkin, secondly, from North Hills West, and I'm going to recognize this gentleman here, number 3, and we'll go from there. So go ahead. We're ready. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Handal.
Yes, sir.
You just spoke about the Brown Act. Assuming you need California Ralph, state California Ralph M. Brown Act.
Correct.
However, we all know that there is this other document called the City of Los Angeles Department of Neighborhood Empowerment Brown Act, as written and interpreted by the LA City Attorney's Office.
Correct.
Which seems to be the gospel that they follow. So my question is, and this seems to be a constantly evolving document. So you said the district attorney is in charge of the Brown Act. So how can the city attorney put out this authority and make all neighborhood councils conform to Dunn's version, or the city, I should say the city attorney's version, rather than the actual original state Brown Act?
Well, from what I've seen, and I'm not a lawyer, I don't pretend to be a lawyer, but from what I've seen in the evolution of the city's version, it's not the city's version of the Brown Act, it's the interpretation.
Interpretation.
Okay? And the city attorney typically gives opines on, you know, a lot of issues when we ask them to do an opine on it. And the reason is, I don't think there were neighborhood councils envisioned when the Brown Act was done. So there's things that are happening today, like electronic communications, you know, email, serial meetings, by email, that type of thing, that were never envisioned when the Brown Act came out. So, you know, as new things come up, the city attorney's responsibility is to try and keep us within the guidelines of the mainframe. So what they end up doing is saying, okay, well, based on these new things, that fits into here because. and then re-follow those rules to ensure. So it's not that they're rewriting the Brown Act for city attorneys, they're doing opine on the Brown Act for neighborhood councils, so that we at least can try and stay within the guidelines of the main frame of the Brown Act.
The problem is when a new city attorney comes in, they change the opine.
And
They're changing the game all the time.
And that's why it's an opine. Now, generally speaking, and this has been a big complaint lately, you know, they change the game on everything, not just the city attorney. You know, Dunn will tell you this week you have to do it this way, and then next week they'll tell you you have to do it that way. And if I talk to Armando, he says green, and if I talk to Jessica, she says red, and if I talk to Lon Quinn, she'll say blue. You know, so that's an issue that we are now talking about more. Again, and that goes back to trying to get all the balloons into a bouquet. You know, you got to give the same answer. You can't keep changing your opinion or your answer on some of the rules that you make. Okay, and that's exactly one of the issues that we're dealing with.
Mr. York.
I'm Mike York. I'm from North County Press, Neighborhood Council. In our council, we seem to have a brand new, undocumented process about adding agenda items to committee meetings. So it used to be that the committee members, the committee chairman, would put together their agenda, and it would be, notice would be given. Now, the chairman sends the agenda, the suggested agenda, to the president and the vice president, and maybe one of the other board members, and then they decide which is allowed, what's not allowed. Let's call it pre-censorship. And not only will they remove agenda items that the committee chairman and the committee members want to talk about, but they will add agenda items of their own wanting. I do not believe they have this power, but they have taken that power.
Okay, so what I'm going to do for you, personally, is I'll review the bylaws and see what the bylaws say about agenda setting, because there should be a paragraph in there about agenda setting. And if they're violating the rule, if there's an executive committee that does the agenda, then whoever the executive committee is can add on to the agenda. That what they should not be doing is stating the merits of an agenda item. An agenda setting committee should say, okay, I've got these 5 items. Item number 1, I think we should send it to the planning committee because it hasn't gone through a committee yet and they should vet it. So let's send this to planning. Item number 2, okay, it's ready to go to the board. We should take this to the board, blah, blah, blah. They shouldn't be going, oh my God, Home Depot? No way, we're not going to support Home. No, I'm not even going to hear it. They shouldn't be working on the merit of it. What I will do before we leave, give me some information, and I will review the bylaws.
And this is not the executive committee.
It's a committee.
No, this is a cobble of
right. So again,
not the committee. It's
okay.
2 people and maybe a 3rd person.
So I will tell you, on my neighborhood council, we don't have an executive committee, and I set the agenda. That's how it works. But it's real simple. People send the agenda items, and they go on the agenda.
Yes.
This is a no-brainer. I don't want to fight with anybody then. I'm going to fight with them later. I don't need 2 fights. You know, let's do it all at once. So I'll work with you on that.
Thank you.
Sir, you were number 3.
Thank you.
Yes, you got 3.
Okay. I didn't understand you indicating that.
Okay.
Les Eisenman, Somar, Staple.
Thank you for coming.
Pleasure to be here. I found it very interesting that you correctly identified the rulings of Dunn and the city attorney as opinions, because that's exactly what they are. They have no force other than the force of argumentation. As opinions, what happens when those opinions clearly violate fundamental constitutional guarantees? And that then becomes the basis on which members of the executive board rule out on the say-so of Dunn and the city attorney certain things from being on the agenda.
So give me an example. I'm not that smart, so give me an example.
Well, I'll give you an example. I asked to begin with that something be placed on the agenda for the consideration of the board, that a resolution be passed on the issue of the overuse of antibiotics on factory farms. And that, the resolution was presented and worded the whole thing. And it was to go to our 2 senators and congresspeople, because they are the ones that have before them bills that they will sooner or later have to vote on in that regard. And it simply asks that the board, either because they choose to or don't choose to, state their position in that fashion, either supporting those bills or not supporting them. They have no power and no authority. Yet, when the president of the board contacted Dunn, the why that I can't tell you, she and the vice president were told first time that it couldn't be on the agenda. Period. That was then sent to me. I argued the point in email to the effect that it was an abridgment of various rights and that any group had the right to state its position, organized or unorganized, and that was a protected right. Dunn then came back and said, okay, you can do it, but you can only send the letters to the city councilman and the mayor. And so it was brought to me, and I said, would I accept that? And I said, absolutely not. It's incorrect at its base. It's fundamentally flawed. And it will produce nothing. I managed to get it on the agenda through the executive committee. It was then opposed on the basis that Dunn and the city attorney had said they couldn't do it. Now, I won by a plurality, but that plurality was negated by the abstentions. And the abstentions came to me afterward to say the only reason they abstained was because they were told by Dunn and the city attorney that they couldn't do it.
Okay. So let me give you my limited knowledge, which is probably what my wife says I have in most cases. First of all, the charter says that we are an elected body who is advisory to the city elected officials. That's what the charter says. So every time I go to a council, and I go to a lot of them, and they're voting on, we don't like the policy in Zimbabwe, and we think Israel should do this, and we think Egypt should do that, and we're not happy with, I tell people all the time, and again, it's my opinion. My agendas, if you want something like this on the agenda, I'm happy to put it on to ask my city council to pass a resolution at city council and send it to the feds, because that's their job. Our job is to advise the city council people what we want. Okay? Our job is not to tell the state and to tell the feds and to tell everybody else what they want, because that's not what's in the charter. The charter is very clear. Okay? Our job is to advise our local elected officials and to bridge the gap between them. That's not to say you can't write a personal letter, okay? But that's not to say you can't send a copy of that resolution to your federal and state elected officials to show them what you sent to the city council. But the truth of the matter is, you know, passing a resolution and debating it for 45 minutes and taking up all the rest of the business of your local neighborhood, okay, for something that has absolutely no power and bearing anywhere, if you don't send it to the city council, it makes no sense. All you did was waste 45 minutes of your council's business on something that they have no jurisdiction over. Now, I know it's a feel-good thing for you and maybe for other people, but the fact of the matter is, you know, we don't have that jurisdiction. So what I tell people, like Echo Park, where the president of Echo Park is very social-minded and, you know, Occupy LA type movement, you know, if you're going to pass something, pass it asking your city council to pass a resolution that this is a resolution we'd like you to pass, and we voted on it, and it's 1800. You can then, he can send that to the whole world and do a press release. But he's sending it in the right format, which is to his city council and to the mayor, saying, this is what we'd like you to do because this is what your neighborhood feels about this issue. And you get a lot further than arguing over can we do, can't we do. Because it's really not what we're supposed to be doing, according to the charter. Yes?
I would point out to you that any group, organized or unorganized, absolutely has a right within the Constitution to petition any group.
Agreed. Agreed.
What you're saying, though, is that the neighborhood council has no such right.
No, what I'm saying is...
Yes, that's exactly what you said.
What I said was the neighborhood council's responsibility under the charter is to advise the city elected officials. So if you want something like that to pass, okay, you get exactly what you want by following the system, which is send it to your city council members, you know, City Hall at empowerla.org or City Hall at whatever that is, and it goes to all 15 council people, you know, send them the resolution that says, we would like you to pass a resolution in City Council. Then take it to land and take it to bank and get all neighborhood councils, if it's that important, to jump on it and ask the City Council people to do it, because then it's strength in numbers. While everybody has a right to do it, it's not our job. See, there's a difference between you have a right to do it and should you do it. Because you should be doing the job of your neighborhood. You should be taking care of the local issues that affect your neighborhood every day. That's our main job, is to bridge that gap. So we're bridging that gap when you send that resolution to the city council people. We're bridging that gap. Their job is to send it to the feds where it's more powerful.
Under the city charter, there is nothing that says that the city council should send it to them.
I don't disagree, but there's absolutely nothing.
And if they have no obligation to do so, whether they pass it or not, they have no right to even pass it according to your interpretation of the rules.
I back you up 100%, quite honestly, because I've seen them pass more stuff that has nothing to do with our city. You know, while our city's going to hell in a handbasket, you know, with a $415 million budget deficit over the next 3 years, and contracts that we can't come to terms with, you know, with labor unions, they're worried about, you know, something out in, you know, 8,000 miles away from here. So, you know, we're on the same page, maybe not in the same direction. You know, I don't disagree, but I think your best bet, I guess my advice to you and to everybody here is when you have issues like that, you know, bring in your motion, and it should be motion that you ask the city council to pass that motion. Whether they will or not, depends on how they wake up that day. You know, but the fact of the matter is, you made it clear what you wanted to do. You send it to the city and send copies to all the people you want to send it to.
That's another investigation.
You get the same effect.
Neighborhood council.
Okay.
We need to.
Okay, we need to move on.
Any
other questions?
Any other complaints? Any other issues you've had at your neighborhood councils? Something you want to bring up? Something that you're unhappy about? Yes.
I just want to make a point of what this gentleman was making. And I totally agree with what you said, that, you know, with regard to the charter, but the fact remains is the Department of Neighborhood Empowerment and the City Attorney's Office were out of line to direct any neighborhood council and tell them that they cannot address that on their neighborhood council, because they can't.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
I disagree with what they did, how they did it. You know, in my opinion, the right way to do it would have been, you can put it on your agenda to ask the city council to do this. Okay? Pass the motion and send it down to city council as a motion passed by your board advising your elected officials you feel strongly about this issue and you'd like them to pass a resolution to send on to Senator whoever or Congressperson whoever. You know, so, and what I heard here was what I've heard many times. You got 3 different answers for one question. You know, you can, you can't, well, you can, but you got to do it this way. You know, and the board, you know, quite frankly, when the city attorney gives me an opine on something, I got people on my board that will disagree. But my answer is always pretty simple. You know, if someone's going to come and sue me, I want the city attorney to defend me, and he's not going to defend me if I go against his recommendation. So I have to go, my opinion, from my neighborhood council, I go with what the city attorney tells me. Okay, I'll challenge him until I get blah, 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 and I think we've seen that in a number of cases, where if you challenge him, you know, and I think in the words of one commissioner, don't tell me no, tell me how. You know, and I think that's the thing we have to start asking the department, and we have to start asking the city attorney, and we have to start asking everybody in our city. Don't tell me no, tell me how. Because we'll be a lot more effective if we can do the things we want to do, if they'll just guide us in the right direction of how to do what we could. So, but again, I don't disagree with you. Can we ask questions?
Yes,
Yeah.
David. Right. David.
I'm a member of the Northridge West and Neighborhood Council. I'm the chair of various committees. And I wanted to ask you, because I'm a new member, fairly new, and I've got 3 new guys and gals that are just entering the board. They don't know you. So if you're going to ask them to comply with the Brown Act, they're just not trained yet.
Training. Dear Gracie, I have all these people on my board who think that they're operating a 7-Eleven. Okay? Please send us training in the following: how to run a meeting, how to comply with agenda posting, how. You know, the department ran out after the elections to train. They sent training out. We're going to do a training at your neighborhood council. Okay, and they gave you a 40-minute, you know, cliff notes that told you, in my opinion, not a lot. Because most of the neighborhood councils I go to, the trainings that they got was so superficial that they really got no in-depth how to do their business. So, and they did that, and again, I love to give opinion, as long as we're on camera. Gracie will see this. Okay? They did this because the mentors wanted to go out and do the training, okay, and work with them, but because they decided to file a complaint against the department, they were going to prove that they could do everything they could. So they were going to go do the trainings too. And honestly, they didn't do a very good job of it in a lot of cases. You know, I get calls every single day. The Congress that you just had downtown, that we just had downtown, and the sheets at the end, you know, where you can write your opinions and, you know, all the recap sheets after each session. 24 neighborhood councils asked for help. We have 95 neighborhood councils. So almost 30% of the neighborhood councils wrote down, we need help in, blah, blah, blah. We need help in. We need this to be a longer training session. We don't know anything about this. We need more help. Okay? So my hope is that now that the C4C program, the handcuffs are going to be off, that we'll be able to get more people out. And we're going to be recruiting, quite honestly, more people who have been in the system to come out and work with us, train them and work with us. Because I have a feeling we're going to be extremely busy based on the numbers that I have at this point. So your answer is, Gracie, we need training. And anyone who wants mentoring or training, by the way, the system the way it is up until now, the board has to vote to bring in a mentor or a trainer, okay, from the outside, like a mentoring group. Which is insane, because half the time when the problem is the president, he won't agendize it, so it never gets done. So, yes.
Can I make a suggestion for you also that you bring back the board retreats. I understand retreats.
Retreats are big.
Unfortunately, well, I've been at a couple of retreats. They're excellent for training.
Retreats coming up. Well, I'm one of the only people doing committee meetings and agendas. So I'm kind of learning by doing. I'm bouncing this, bouncing that.
I'm going to give you my card. I'm going to give you my card, and we'll help.
I have your card there.
Okay, what?
I've got. I'll use it.
Cool.
I believe there is a big confusion, number one, at Dunning, and number two, within the neighborhood council membership, and maybe three, among the stakeholders, that there is a difference between training and attendance. So they have a training session, and somebody is physically there for 1 hour, or they are at home in front of their computer, they log in and log out. And just by being there, breathing and being conscious, they make the assumption that they have learned something, and they are capable of following the directions, instructions they have given them. They have not been trained. When one is, people should be certified with a verifiable quantitative evidence of their understanding of the concepts.
So my answer is number one, anyone who runs for neighborhood council should be certified.
Maybe,
But you're right. I've been to a lot of neighborhood council trainings, particularly with the city attorney, where it's a big long table of 50 people, and she's at the end, with a PowerPoint, and she's reading the PowerPoint, and the people in the back are playing mahjong. Okay, so but what becomes evident is when the neighborhood council is not functioning. That becomes very clear that people either didn't take the training, slept through the training, didn't absorb the training, or whatever. So that's when you guys need to, have that come to him meeting, where you go, all right, look, this ain't working. We need to have a retreat. We need to have a, what are our biggest problems? And evaluate yourself. We can't run a meeting. We can't get through a whole meeting without fighting. We have constant problems with agenda posting. Our agendas are always being kicked back saying that they are not compliant. Make those lists and then say, we need to have a 2-hour meeting, a retreat, call it whatever you want. Call it a retreat, call it a training, and training shouldn't be blah, I have to come out here and do this, here's an hour, you're done, thank you all, sign the paper, we'll send it in, we'll put you on the website in about 6 months and we'll show you did it, okay? That's not what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be, how does it really work and how can we make it? So make those lists, and then who do you write to?
Casey.
Good, you're getting in. You're getting in.
This is our last speaker, and I'm going to give to him this gentleman, then I'm going to go on Glenn Bailey as the last speaker. So go ahead. Mr. Arlita, yes, sir.
Regarding training. Under a previous administration, BWK, they created a PDF document. It was called Orientation for Board Members. I felt it was great. So before they yanked it down with a bunch of the old pines off one of their other websites that Dunn had, I downloaded it, and I have it. Great. You have it. I think.
This is it.
Good. My other point is, well, first of all, what do you think of that document? Is it applicable today in 2014? And the other part is, what do you think of the online training? I assume it's still there on the Dunn website.
Yeah. Okay, so the online training, there's a lot of trainings. They got more trainings than Bonham and Bailey with their animals. Right. But the fact of the matter is really kind of simple. It's really hands-on that's going to do it. This is great. Tools for successful meetings, goes through the whole thing, committees, the whole bit. And by the way, anybody who wants, I'm going to, if you want, email me, and I will send you emails of parliamentary workshop, Robert's rules for dummies. Okay, this particular PDF, you know, on how to run a meeting, committees, the whole language that needs to be in an agenda, setting an agenda, guidelines for Robert's rules. This whole packet here is what I give out when I go to neighborhood councils and work with them. You know, planning and land use policies and procedures and requirements from developers, what they have to bring you when they go on the agenda. These are all things, it's all part of what I teach when I go out there, when I'm assigned to neighborhood council. I'll give you one quick example, and that's downtown LA. Okay, I was in downtown LA for 14 months embedded in their neighborhood council by the department because of issues that were happening. So, as I was the Royal Seiko and a number of others. I finally got to the point with all the factions and everything stopped. It became clear that running a meeting was the last piece of the puzzle to make it work well. And I called Gracie and I said, I've got a proposition. I want to ask the chair of the board if she'll agendize having me run their next meeting as an in-board trainer. And she said, well, you know, if they'll buy it, I'm good with it. So I called the chair. She said, great. So 10 minutes before their meeting, they had a special meeting. The only agenda item was approving me to run their meeting at 7 o'clock. And I ran that meeting. And for the first time in 6 months, they did every agenda item. They got out a half hour earlier than ever. Okay? And at the end, I never had to do it again. Because they got it. They figured it out. Will it work with everybody? It could. Depends on how interested they are in making it work. But a hands-on meeting really worked. Because there's no better training than watching this stuff happen and seeing how to mitigate it as it's happening. You know, whether it's, you know, an unruly board member, an unruly stakeholder, an item that's not agendized right or whatever. So, you know, that's my best. Glenn.
So this has to do with agendas and ENS, the early notification service and oversight. So I forget the exact number, but I think it was like over 100 agendas in a week, given the board agendas, the committee agendas, etc. They're getting posted and sent out. For most neighborhood councils complying, a few aren't, which is an issue, the ones that aren't. But it appears that there's really not adequate review of those agendas. And I'll give you an example. I've noticed, and I do not look at the entire city. I'm not taking that on, but I do happen to catch some things that brought to my attention. There's some neighborhood councils that are trying to get around the Brown Act by calling special meetings that are the same as their regular meeting place and date and time, and they're just calling it a special meeting to get around the 72-hour notification. Now, the ENS, of course, doesn't have to go out 72 hours in advance, but if you don't get it to them 72 hours in advance, it's not going to even get close to that. My question is what can C4C do, or what are the prospects of C4C helping with monitoring on a citywide basis, not on a request basis? And I understand to come into a council, you need to be asked to do that. But it appears that the department, and also this includes the city attorney, some of these instances were brought to the city attorney's attention, and they failed to respond and let the meeting go ahead by failing to respond. The question is, can C4C provide some oversight on perhaps a priority basis for the problematic neighborhood councils without having to be asked by those neighborhood councils to take that task on, to simply review agendas and bring it to the attention of the folks in the department and or the city attorney that are problematic, or worse, like Brown Act violations.
So I think C4C and the volunteer group can be extremely helpful overall. Number one, I think every special agenda item should be flagged and sent to a volunteer group, you know, and we can do it by region. You can, you know, and again, this is part of what I'm going to be meeting with Gracie on Monday about the new formula of how to use C4C. And I think that's a great example, is to be able to say, all right, I've got 5 people. Every special, regions 1 through 4 will go to this person, anything that says special agenda. 5 through 8 will go to this person, anything that's special agenda. and then someone can flag them down, and the first thing you gotta look for is it the same day and time as their regular meeting? And if it is, all it means is they were too lazy and they didn't post on time, okay? And they're trying to cheat the stakeholders out of having 72 solid hours to be able to review what's going to happen because they want to sneak something through. And the policy from BONC should be passed that says any special agenda item that is dated the same time and day as a regular scheduled meeting, meetings must be canceled and rescheduled. People need to get in compliance. And again, this goes back to rules. This goes back to what I said in the very beginning. You got a lot of people out there who say, grassroots, leave us alone, give it to the Brown Act, don't tell us what to do. No. The people have a right to see the agenda at least 72 hours in advance. Okay? And if you're going to call a special because you didn't get up on time to post it, you couldn't get your board members to pull their stuff together on time, tough. Then make it a week later. That's the way it goes. Special meetings are just that. And if you read the Brown Act, they are for special occasions. They're not because you screwed up and you didn't get something out on time. That's not the point. But if you want real enforcement of that, yes, I can get 5 volunteers to scan every, agenda that comes through that says special agenda on it. The question is, what can we do about that? Well, we have to send it to the department, and the department has to be the bad guy right now and go, no, you can't do that, you're not allowed. So, if there was a policy in place that says you can't do it, then there's teeth for the department to say, your meeting is canceled. So, rumor has it there's a couple of people in here that might be able to take that to a table and try and pass something like that. And if those people actually are here and making notes, you heard it first, folks. So if I come back here 4 months from now and no one's even addressed it, look to the back of the room.
This is Tony Wilkinson from Panorama City, North Hills. Just a comment on that though before the policy may get out of hand. There are times, and I remember some recently where the department was having a meeting to announce new rules that happened after our 72-hour period. So we have a 72-hour regular meeting agenda. But when new things come up that are timely, you can do a special meeting. We typically do it for a different hour. That's confirmed.
And that's different than what they're talking about, though.
Yeah.
Okay, we do that all the time.
What are they talking about?
Yeah, what they're talking about is same day, same time.
Right. I wanted to reserve the ability to do this because you'd have to recess one, you do the special, you come back,
Exactly.
and that's a legitimate.
Absolutely. Any time an important time, you know what they say. A special meeting is for a timely manner. It has to be brought up before your next regularly scheduled meeting, and you didn't have enough time to post it within the 72 hours.
Can I ask you a question? Should it be for just 1 or 2 items as opposed to an agenda of 10?
It's supposed to be for a timely item that you have to vote on before your next meeting. So, what a lot of people are doing is they're just not posting until 24 hours before, and they're holding a full regular meeting at their regular time. And that's wrong. That's just disingenuous. What those people are doing is trying very hard to make sure that the public gets screwed out of their opportunity to actually be able to participate. But if you have an item or a couple of items that are timely, it can't be just because I want to do it now because Harry and Sam aren't going to be here and they're going to put up a big argument, so let's get it on there now. It has to be a timely item. So, and Tony hit it right on the head. I've had it in my own council where something comes up and you have to jump on it real quickly. You can't amend your agenda. What we can do is set a separate agenda and then recess in and recess out. Which I have to make one more comment because it brings up the other issue you've heard about when the committee wants to meet and a lot of board members want to go at the same time, and you're not allowed to have more than a majority of a quorum at a meeting. So then you have a joint meeting of the board and the committee. You post a joint meeting. So there's 2 ways to post joint meetings. One is the board is not going to take action. You're only advising the public that in theory more than a majority of a quorum of board members will be at the committee, and the committee wants to speak. The other way is the board actually wants to take action at that meeting because it's an important item that's timely that they need to take action. If it's the latter, you need two agendas. You need a committee agenda, and you open up, you do your business and close your committee, and you need a board agenda where you open, recess, go back to the committee, let them do their work, then when